Julius Caesar was born in 100 BC into an old Roman family with a famous name, but not much money left. From the start, he was confident, ambitious, and maybe a little too sure that destiny owed him something big. As a young man, still in his 20s, Caesar didn't quite know what to do with that ambition. So he left Rome to study in Rhodes. It was a quiet island where rich Romans went to learn how to give important speeches. But his trip didn't go as planned. Somewhere on the Aegean Sea, pirates captured his ship. Yes, actual pirates. They demanded a ransom of 20 talents of silver. Caesar laughed and told them to ask for 50 instead, because 20 was an insult. While his friends collected the money, he lived on their ship for over a month. He joked with them, wrote poetry, and read it out loud. When they got bored, he told them to be quiet. The pirates laughed. He told them, "I'll come back and crucify you all." They laughed harder, except he really meant it. After the ransom was paid and he was freed, Caesar didn't go home to rest. He raised a small navy, found the pirates, and captured every one of them. He ordered them all crucified, just like he'd promised, but in his own version of mercy, he had their throats cut first. That was Caesar in his 20s. In his 40s, Caesar was already deep in Gaul, what we now call France. While most senators in Rome argued about taxes and togas, Caesar was out there fighting entire nations. The war was brutal, and it made him richer than anyone in Rome. The Gallic Wars started as a campaign to protect Rome's borders, but let's be honest, it ended with Caesar expanding Roman territory. Over nearly 10 years, he conquered tribe after tribe, pushed Roman control to the Atlantic, and even crossed into Britain, just to prove he could. He commanded around 50,000 men, and they would follow him anywhere just because he won every time, again and again. He was clever, ruthless, and, according to him, always right. And yes, he made sure everyone knew it. While fighting, he wrote books about his own campaigns in which he, of course, was the hero of every page. So yes, those victories made him a celebrity. But back in Rome, the Senate wasn't celebrating. They saw a man with too much power, too much money, and way too many loyal soldiers. Just a year after finishing the Gallic Wars, Caesar used his new power to start a civil war. The Senate ordered him to disband his army and return to Rome as a private citizen. Sounds simple, right? Except in Roman politics, that was basically a death sentence. Without his troops, Caesar would lose his protection, his career, and probably his head. So he faced a choice: obey the Senate and fade into history, or risk everything and fight for control of Rome. Guess which one he chose? In January of 49 BC, he stood on the northern border of Italy, at a small river called the Rubicon. Behind him was Gaul and safety. Ahead was Rome and treason. Of course, he decided to cross that river, ignoring every warning. It was in this moment that he said something we all know even today. The die is cast. And that was it. The moment he crossed the river with his army, Rome erupted into chaos. Senators fled the city, and some joined Pompey, Caesar's old ally turned rival. The Republic was splitting in two. This was a declaration that Caesar would no longer follow the rules. From that moment on, Rome would follow him. Now let's take a break from Caesar's wars, because his story wouldn't be complete without his love life, which, by today's standards, was pretty complicated. His first wife was Cornelia. She came from an old, powerful family, which was perfect for young Caesar's ambitions. They had a daughter, Julia. Sadly, Cornelia died young. Then came Pompeia. She was elegant, respected, and the center of a very public scandal. During a religious festival, a man, disguised as a woman, snuck into her house. It was a disaster. Caesar divorced her immediately. His third and final wife was Calpurnia. She was young, loyal, and by his side until the very end. But don't mistake until the end for faithful. Caesar was, well, a busy man, both politically and romantically. Now, let's go back to 48 BC. Rome was still in the middle of a civil war, and it was finally time for the conflict between Caesar and Pompey to end. But since Pompey had only the Senate on his side and Caesar had the entire army, you can guess who won. Pompey fled across the Mediterranean to Egypt, hoping for safety. And if you're wondering why Egypt, well, at the time it was an ally of Rome. Still, that turned out to be a pretty bad choice. The Egyptians knew Caesar was the victor, so they decided to kill Pompey and send Caesar his head as a gift. But they made a huge mistake. Caesar, even though Pompey had been his enemy, was horrified when he saw what they had done. So he decided to go to Egypt himself and straighten out the situation. And that's when Cleopatra entered the story. She was only 21 and already in the middle of a royal family feud with her brother Ptolemy XIII, who was the pharaoh of Egypt at the time. According to legend, she had herself smuggled into Caesar's palace rolled up in a carpet, or maybe a linen sack, just to meet him face to face. However it happened, it worked. Caesar was impressed. What started as a political meeting quickly turned into something more. Caesar helped Cleopatra win back her throne, and in return, she helped him forget about Roman politics for a while. They celebrated their victory with a grand trip down the Nile, and before long, Cleopatra gave birth to a son, Caesarion, or Little Caesar. After settling things in Egypt, and by settling we mean having a baby with Cleopatra, he moved east to face King Pharnaces of Pontus. Pharnaces had been causing trouble, beating Roman forces and bragging about it. Caesar didn't like that, so he marched straight to him. The battle took place near a small town called Zela in what's now Turkey, and it lasted just a few hours. Pharnaces barely had time to line up his men before Caesar's army crushed them. When it was over, Caesar didn't send a detailed report back to Rome. He didn't need to. Instead, he wrote 3 words to the Senate. Veni, vidi, vici. I came. I saw. I conquered. When Caesar returned to Rome, he spent mountains of money on massive public games. But he didn't come home alone. He brought Cleopatra and their son, Caesarion. A foreign queen living in Rome with the most powerful man on earth? That didn't sit well with the old Roman elite. Caesar acted like a man who could do whatever he wanted because, well, he basically could. That's why Caesar decided to reform time itself. The Roman calendar was a complete mess. No one really knew what day it was anymore. So Caesar brought in an astronomer from Egypt, Sosigenes, and created a brand new system. 365 days a year, plus 1 extra day every 4 years. It was simple, logical, and it finally made sense. That's the Julian calendar. And yes, July was named after him. By 44 BC, Caesar had achieved everything, so he declared himself dictator for life. To him, it probably sounded efficient. To the Senate, it sounded like the end of the Republic. Caesar had crossed too many lines, and the senators decided there was only one way to stop him. On March 15th, that same year, Caesar walked into the Senate. He was surrounded by people he knew. Among them was Brutus, the one he loved almost like a son. Suddenly, one senator grabbed his toga, another pulled a dagger. More than 20 senators were attacking the most powerful man in Rome. Caesar tried to fight back, but he stopped when he saw Brutus raise his knife. According to legend, he looked at him and said, "Even you, Brutus?" Those were his final words after being stabbed 23 times.